I really feel like a dinosaur, and I'll tell you why. One, I'm in an institute of science. I have nothing to do with science. I know bollocks about it. Two, which is minimum 400 years old, and we Indians love to say it's 2,000 years old. Three, I'm talking after a rock show. You can edit this, but I'm screwed on all fronts. So you have to bear with my seriousness for the next 18 minutes. And I request you to bear with that. Being a musician, in many ways, or trying to be an honest musician in many ways, is a very, very introspective and very lonely kind of a job. Not just a musician. You can talk to a painter, you can talk to a sculptor, you can talk to any one of them and tell you, it's a very, because it gets you to think about stuff that you wouldn't normally think about. It gets you to question things about yourself that you wouldn't normally question, because art does that to you. So my talk, I'm going to try and have two parts of it. One is going to be generic, another I'll talk about music too. And I'm going to be generic because I think these questions are born out of the fact that there's a journey that has happened in music, for me at least personally. The title of this whole session, To Invent the Future, intrigued me tremendously. Because both these words are very important as a musician and as an individual, I think, for every one of us. The first question I'd like to ask you, if you can quickly answer because I'm on a timeline. What is an invention? Anything else? Creation. Anything else? Come on, man. Science. Something that solves a problem. Lovely. Okay. Something that hasn't seen before, something that's creative, something that solves a problem. Well, then what is a discovery? It's also something that has not been seen before. Yeah, exactly. So, invention is probably something that has not solves a problem, but it has a history to it. It is not a standalone happening. The history begins many times with a discovery. For example, the apple falling down from the tree. You recognize it as a facet of nature. You call it gravity. And that leads you to a process of innovation, which could result in what you call an invention. So an invention, interestingly, is not something new in a certain way. It itself has a history to it. It is not something that props up from nowhere. So the whole process of invention is very interesting, whether it's science or whether it is arts too. The next question is, when I say how new is invention then, is an important question, especially nowadays when every YouTube video has awesome, that's innovative, that is something unbelievable, never seen before, happening every second minute by every one of us. You wonder which is really an invention, which is really an innovation, which is really something new. We really don't know. The lines are completely blurred today between what is new and what is not new. So that's another question that came to me. The third question, does an invention or to invent have to have a social responsibility to it? Is there something that it needs to do to society? Is there some way it needs to make you interact with society better, reflect on society better, or even improve what we do in society better? These are the three questions that came to my head when I read the word invent. When I read the word future, I wondered which future? 100 years from now? 50 years from now? 10 years from now? 5 hours from now? 4 minutes from now? Or 10 seconds later? In a way, I'm the past and you're the future, because by the time the light travels from me to you, you're all science students, I have already finished saying what I said. Or my actions are already over. So which future are we talking about? Does this future really matter? That was what was the second thing that bothered me about this title. To me, everything exists in the present. And the bigger issue is the present. And why I say this is, first of all, how do we understand the present? Okay, I have a time. How do you understand the present? I'm not talking about Facebook, I'm not talking about YouTube, I'm not talking about television, I'm not talking about the newspapers. It's our own interaction with the present. How many of us actually interact with what we have in society around us today? How many of us actually look at what's happening in society? Behavior of society, technology in society, the problems in society. As an individual, how many of us really, really interact is another question that came to my head. And my answer was very few or hardly not. So then what is this world we live in? The world we live in is completely guided by what we want in our life. It is our individual needs, our individual wants, our individual satisfactions is what guides our life. There's no question of right or wrong. I think it's a question of perception. I'll give you an example. I drove down a very long drive to your institute. And as I drove down, I was looking out of the window. And I saw a lot of things. But as I reached your institute, I was thinking to myself, what did I notice? And I'll tell you what I noticed, maximum. Were the huge apartment complexes, were the lovely offices. And when I saw the apartment complexes, I thought, oh wow, it would be lovely to have an apartment there. When I saw the lovely offices, I said, wow, it would be a cool job to have there. I did not think of the lady I was in an air-conditioned car. I did not think of the lady on the side of the road who was selling grapes in the hot sun at 12 noon, and that is not an image that stayed with me till I came here. The image that stayed with me was what was concerning me as an individual and my needs, which is a house, which is occupation, which is money, which completely bowled me over in my own head of what I was thinking of and what is this society I'm talking about. I actually have no clue of this society. The only society I care about is what concerns me. That's all. And you may wonder what's this got to do with music. I think it does. I'll come to that quickly. Then you need to go a step further, I think, and question what you understand about yourself. Why talk about society? Your own thoughts, your own actions. Do you ever think about your own thoughts and your own actions? Do we, rather, not you, but we. We don't. So every action that we do today, like an invention, has a history, has a past, has your friends, has your mother, has your father, has your teacher, has this institution. Every thought in your head and every action is not new. It has a history to it. It has something, it has a seed that has been sown, and you are just delivering what comes out of all that. So we don't ever think about that. Why do we need to ask these questions? Primarily because we keep talking about being better human beings. We all keep talking about that. We need to be better human beings, which means write a check for some donation, probably. But then what is this better human being? Is this better human being a person who's willing to be violent to make sure that his thoughts get accent over another person's thought? So what is this better human being? These are the questions that came to my mind when I thought about the future and I talk about invention. And how does it relate to music? It relates very, very interestingly in a huge way. Carnatic music was considered dead in the 1980s. 1985, everybody declared there are no young people performing classical music. And forget about it, you're all dead. Nothing's going to happen. All the guys who listen, girls listening to girls is probably the wrong term, are about 70. So just forget about it. I mean, they're going to kick the bucket very soon and you guys are all gone. And it was at that time that a group of young people said, you know, we need to do something about it. What do? We need to create an organization, a movement by which young people get to perform and young people get an audience. And that was how an organization called Youth Association for Classical Music was born. We are all, in a way, products of that organization. It changed the way Carnatic music looked. Carnatic music looks something like me today. All I'm trying to say is that we are all not 75 plus. We talk the language that is spoken by everybody else. And we understand society as you understand it, or the lack of understanding that you have and I have are absolutely the same. This paradigm shift in the kind of people who practice the art form also influenced a lot of people to come to concerts, young people coming to concerts. The whole thing that classical music was somehow above every other art form, was something supreme that you need to go and find God somewhere by the end of it, was not what was spoken about. It was described as a beautiful art form that anybody can listen to, and every Indian can have a lot of pride in the fact that such a beautiful art form has evolved in this nation by so many minds. This was a change that happened not thinking about the future, but thinking about the present in 1985. People said, let's do it. Let's change our own perception. Let us go about. So they created games on classical music. They created shows on classical music. I personally went to about 100 schools. This has never left me, even after me leaving the organization. Among other things that I do, I don't only perform. That's the easiest thing for me to do now. Just make money, sing more concerts, come back home. Wow, life's done. Honestly, that's all I need to do. But I think this idea that was given to us by this organization influenced me tremendously. Over the last decade or so, there are multiple things that I've been involved with many people in trying to understand classical music. One important point I want to say, I mentioned it very in passing about the past. The past is a very, very tricky thing. In India, we are obsessive of the past for all the wrong things. We think the past is the greatest thing and the present is the worst. So therefore, the backlash of that idea is that the past is all nonsense and the present is everything. Now, the truth, like everything else, lies somewhere in between. Now, to understand how music is today or how you are as an individual today, both are the same. You need to understand the past of it. You need to have a comprehension of the past of it. So that's why one of the work that we're all involved in is trying to understand music that is today, but understanding why it is the way it is today. Unless I understand music as it is today and comprehend why it is, how can there be anything that changes? How can there be anything that moves with a continuum of a thread that we love to call tradition, but none of us understand what it is? How can that happen? So that is something that we got involved in. Another thing, the temple. This is very interesting. I'm accused of being an atheist many times, and I'm not going to tell you whether I'm a theist or an atheist. But one of the things that we got involved in is trying to revive, myself and my wife, Sangita Shivakumar, who's also a musician, revive cultural events in temples. And the primary reason we thought of that is that the temple was not only a religious center, it was economic and cultural at some point of time. And the cultural angle in this state of Tamil Nadu, at least, is dead. There is practically no art in the temple. In the temple, a person from every strata of society, at least if he's a Hindu, walks in. Even if he's a non-Hindu, you go to Kerala and I will tell you that they'll all be standing, they'll come into the temple and listen to a concert and go. It doesn't matter. So the temple was a place where we felt we could access people. So we tried to revive, we are still trying to revive arts in temples. Research in music. Another movement that we started is called Swanubhava. The idea of this movement was to create a festival wherein the festival is completely run by students of arts, music, dance, drama, and the audience was school, college students, young musicians who could interact with the greatest of performers in this country and every art form. No art form was greater or less. Everything from Carnatic music to Koothu, to Karagam, to Hindustani, to Odissi, to Kathak, to cinema was featured on the same platform. Is still being featured on the same platform. Now, why am I telling you all this? Because all these actions, I think, are more relevant to the present rather than the future. Because they make you understand the present, at least on a musical front, from classical music, from South Indian classical music where I come from, make you understand the present much more clearly. Every action is got to do with what can I do now to understand what I am doing better. And as soon as that comprehension is clear in your head, I think the actions for the future automatically fall into place. The problem is when we are thinking of what we are going to do for the future when we don't even want to think about what we are doing today. So I'm not going to take too much more of time. I'm just going to say a few things and finish. To me, life is very much in the present and not in the future. And I think whether it is music, whether it is science, whether it is your life, I just look at 3, 4 things. One, is to try and understand ourselves as individuals and as a collective society, and to see where we are and why we are here. To ask the question, ask all the questions, not the whimsical whys that we love to ask, but serious questions that is born out of some amount of thinking and introspection. Because those are the questions that are going to make you change things. 3, look beyond yourself, your family, your friends, your whatever, add all that. Please look beyond that. Because that's where you will really, I think. And finally, there's no point doing all this if you're not going to transfer that into action, to actually do something about it. And in classical music, we are still trying. We continue to try. So all I'll end by saying, this to me is the discovery, the invention, the innovation of every individual that is necessary to change life. And this life for me lies very much here in the present and not in the future. Thank you very much.